My daughter and her husband have been living in our house for 5 years. It started with good intentions. They were newly married, struggling financially, and my wife, bless her heart, suggested they move in with us until they got on their feet. I agreed. We had the space, and family is supposed to help each other. That's what I believed. At first, it was fine. They were polite, grateful, even helpful. My daughter Jolia would cook dinner once a week. Her husband, Bob, mowed the lawn and helped fix the leaky faucet in the kitchen. We thought this won't be forever. They'll save up, move out, and we'll be proud we helped them. But months turned into years, and slowly things changed. They stopped helping, stopped saying thank you. Bob started treating our home like it was his. He'd rearrange furniture without asking, blast music late at night, and speak to my wife like she was a maid. Jolia didn't say much. She'd just sit quietly, scrolling on her phone, pretending not to notice. My wife, Pamela, is a gentle soul. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't complain. But I saw the way she shrank a little more each time Bob dismissed her. I saw the way she'd wait until everyone was asleep to cry in the kitchen. I told myself, it's just temporary. They're young. They'll grow up. But then the baby came. A beautiful little boy named Zaid, our first grandchild. Pamela was over the moon. She knitted blankets, cooked special meals, and even gave up her sewing room so they could have a nursery. And then it happened. Zaid was barely a week old. Pamela walked into the living room, smiling, and reached out to hold him. Bob snatched the baby away and shouted, "Don't touch him! You're filthy!" The room went silent. Pamela stood there, frozen, her hands still midair. Her face turned pale. She didn't say a word. She just turned and walked away. I followed her to the kitchen. She was standing by the sink, staring out the window, tears streaming down her face. That was the moment. That was when something inside me snapped. I walked back into the living room, picked up my phone and called Jolia. She answered casually, "Hey, Dad, what's up?" I said 2 words. "Get out." There was silence. Then she said, "Wait, what?" I repeated, "Get out." She stammered, "Dad, what are you talking about?" "We live here," I said, "not anymore." "You have 1 week," she tried to argue. Said they had nowhere to go. Said it was unfair. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain. I just said, "You let him humiliate your mother in her own home." That's all I need to know. I hung up. Bob was standing nearby, arms crossed, smirking like he thought I was bluffing. He wasn't smirking a week later when I handed him the eviction notice. They packed in silence. No apologies, no tears. Just bitterness. Jolia didn't look me in the eye. Bob muttered something about ungrateful old people. I didn't respond. When they left, Pamela sat on the couch and cried. Not because she missed them, but because she finally felt safe again. I didn't yell. I didn't fight. I just reclaimed what was ours. But I wasn't done. Because revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's slow. Sometimes it's watching people fall apart without lifting a finger. I stopped answering their calls. Stopped replying to texts. Stopped sending money. I let them figure it out on their own, and they did. Badly. Bob lost his job 2 months later. Jolia tried to start a home business, but it flopped. They moved into a cramped apartment near the highway, noisy, dirty, and far from the life they were used to. Their friends stopped visiting. Their social media posts dried up. The shine wore off. Jolia started calling again. First once a week, then every day. She'd leave long voicemails crying, begging, apologizing. I didn't respond, because forgiveness isn't owed, especially when respect was never given. Pamela asked me once, "Do you think we're being too harsh?" I looked at her, at the woman who had been insulted, ignored, and treated like dirt in her own home, and said, "No, we're finally being honest." She nodded. And for the first time in years, she smiled without sadness behind it. If you're watching this on the Revenge Diaries channel and this story moved you, even a little, please like and subscribe. There are more stories coming. Stories that prove revenge doesn't have to be cruel. It just has to be earned. After they left, the house felt different. Quieter, yes, but not empty. It felt like something heavy had been lifted, like the walls could finally breathe again. Pamela started humming while she cooked. She went back to her sewing, stitching baby clothes for the neighborhood kids. I hadn't seen her smile like that in years, but I knew it wouldn't last, because people like Bob don't just leave. They linger, they poke. They test your boundaries, hoping you'll crack, and sure enough, it started with the calls. Jolia called first. Her voice was soft, almost rehearsed. "Dad, I just wanted to say I'm sorry." Things got out of hand. I didn't say much. Just listened. Then she said, "Can we come over for dinner sometime?" "Just to talk?" I said, "Not yet." She paused. "Okay, I understand." But she didn't, because 2 days later, Bob called. His tone was different, sharp, defensive. "You overreacted," he said. It was one comment. People say things when they're stressed. I didn't respond. He continued, "You kicked your own daughter out." "What kind of father does that?" I said, "The kind who protects his wife." He scoffed. "You'll regret this." I hung up. That was the last time I answered his calls. But they didn't stop trying. They started showing up at family gatherings. Weddings, birthdays, even funerals. Jolia would smile politely, pretend everything was fine. Bob would stand in the corner, arms crossed, glaring at anyone who spoke to us. People noticed. They asked questions. I didn't give answers, because I wasn't interested in defending myself. I was interested in watching them unravel, and they did. Bob lost his job at the tech firm. Something about poor performance and attitude issues. Jolia tried to start a baking business from home, but it never took off. Their apartment was small, noisy, and far from the comfort they were used to. The baby cried constantly. The neighbors complained. Their social media posts turned bitter, cryptic quotes about betrayal and fake family. I watched from a distance, not because I enjoyed their suffering, but because I wanted them to feel what Pamela had felt, the helplessness, the humiliation, the silence. One day, Pamela found a photo album in the attic. It was full of pictures from Jolia's childhood, birthdays, school plays, vacations. She sat at the kitchen table, flipping through the pages, tears in her eyes. "She used to be so sweet," she whispered. "What happened?" I didn't have an answer, but I knew what I had to do. I started writing, not a book, not a blog, just a letter. To Jolia, to Bob, to anyone who needed to hear it. I wrote about the night they moved in, about the slow erosion of respect, about the moment Bob called my wife filthy, about the silence that followed. I wrote about the strength it took to say, "Get out," about the peace that came afterward, about the healing, and then I posted it online, not under my name, just anonymously, on a parenting forum. It was titled, "When Protecting Your Spouse Means Losing Your Child." It went viral. Thousands of comments poured in. Parents who had been disrespected, grandparents who had been pushed aside, children who had watched their families fall apart. One comment said, "You did the right thing. Respect isn't optional." Another said, "I wish my dad had stood up for my mom like that." I read every comment. So did Pamela. She cried again. But this time it was different. "I'm not alone," she said, and she wasn't, because our story wasn't just ours. It was happening everywhere. Jolia saw the post. I know she did. She sent me a message. "Was that about us?" I didn't reply, because she already knew the answer. And sometimes, silence is the loudest truth. If you're watching this on the Revenge Diaries channel, and this story moved you, even a little, please like and subscribe. There are more stories coming. Stories that remind us standing up for someone you love isn't cruel. It's courageous. After the post went viral, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exposed. Even though I hadn't used names, even though I'd written it anonymously, people close to us started connecting the dots. A few relatives called to ask if it was true. Some were supportive. Others said I should have kept it private. But I didn't care. I hadn't written it for them. I'd written it for Pamela, for myself, for every parent who had swallowed disrespect in the name of family. Jolia didn't call for a few days after the post. I think she was embarrassed, maybe angry, maybe both. But then, late one night, my phone buzzed. It was a message from her. "I saw what you wrote. I didn't know it had gotten that bad. I'm sorry." I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't reply because sorry is easy. It's what people say when they want to move on without doing the work, and I wasn't interested in shortcuts. The next morning, Pamela was watering the plants on the balcony. She looked peaceful. The sun was warm on her face, and for a moment, I just watched her. This woman who had given everything to her children, who had been humiliated in her own home, and who still chose kindness every single day. I walked over and said, "Jolia messaged me." She didn't stop watering. Just said, "What did she say?" She said she's sorry. Pamela nodded slowly. Do you believe her? I thought about it. I believe she regrets what happened, but I don't know if she understands it. That was the truth, because regret isn't the same as accountability, and I wasn't going to let her back into our lives until she understood the difference. A few days later, Jolia showed up at the cafe where Pamela volunteers. She didn't bring Bob. She didn't bring Zaid. She just walked in, ordered tea, and sat quietly at a corner table. Pamela saw her. Their eyes met, but Pamela didn't go over. Julia waited for an hour. Then she left. That night, Pamela told me, she looked tired. Not just physically, like her spirit was tired. I nodded. She's learning. But I still wasn't ready, because the damage they caused wasn't just emotional. It was practical. They had drained our savings, left the house in disrepair, used our utilities without contributing. And worst of all, they had made Pamela feel small in her own home. So I started fixing things. I repainted the living room, repaired the broken tiles in the kitchen, replaced the old curtains with ones Pamela picked out herself. Every change was a step toward reclaiming our space, and with each step, I felt stronger. One afternoon, while I was fixing the garden fence, my neighbor Imran came over. He said, I read your post. My wife cried when she saw it. We've been going through something similar. We talked for an hour. He told me how his son had moved in, treated them like staff, and refused to leave. He said he felt guilty for even thinking about asking him to go. I told him, guilt is what they count on. But peace is what you deserve. He nodded. I think it's time. That conversation stayed with me, because revenge doesn't always look like punishment. Sometimes it looks like permission. Permission for others to stand up, to speak out, to choose peace over guilt. A week later, Jolia messaged again. Can I come over? Just me. I want to talk. I showed the message to Pamela. She said, if she's coming to listen, not defend, then yes. So I replied, come tomorrow at 5, just you. She arrived on time. No makeup, no fancy clothes. Just jeans, a plain shirt, and tired eyes. We sat in the living room. The same room where Bob had insulted Pamela. The same room where I had told them to leave. Julia looked around and said, it looks different. I said, it feels different. She nodded. Then she said, I didn't know how bad it had gotten. I thought you were just being dramatic. But after we left and I saw it, I saw how Bob spoke to me, how he treated Zaid, how he blamed everyone but himself. I didn't interrupt, she continued. I let him speak for me. I let him disrespect you. Disrespect, Mom. I was scared to stand up to him. But that's not an excuse. She looked at Pamela. I'm sorry, Mom, I should have protected you. Pamela's eyes filled with tears. She didn't speak. She just nodded. Then Jolia said, I left him. That caught me off guard. She explained how things had gotten worse, how he'd started yelling more, how he refused to help with Zaid, how he mocked her for missing us. She said, I realized I was becoming someone I didn't recognize. So she packed her bags and moved into a small studio apartment. She got a part-time job, started therapy, and began rebuilding. I listened. I didn't forgive her right away. But I saw the change, and change is what matters. Before she left, she asked, can I visit sometimes? Just to see you? To see Mom. I said, not yet. But maybe soon, she nodded. I'll wait, and she did. Weeks passed. She kept her distance, kept working, kept growing, and slowly we started letting her back in, first for tea, then for dinner, then for family gatherings, but she never moved back in, because some boundaries, once reclaimed, should never be crossed again. If you're watching this on the Revenge Diaries channel, and this story moved you, even a little, please like and subscribe. There are more stories coming. Stories that prove revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's just choosing peace and protecting it. Jolia didn't move back in. That was never an option, but she started showing up more often. Sometimes she'd bring groceries for Pamela. Sometimes she'd just sit quietly in the living room, watching her mother sew or helping me water the plants. She didn't ask for anything. She didn't push. She just showed up, and that mattered, because real change isn't loud. It's consistent. It's quiet steps taken over time. One afternoon, she came by with Zaid. He was almost 2 now, walking, babbling, full of energy. Pamela lit up when she saw him. She knelt down, arms open, and Zaid ran straight into her hug. It was the first time she'd held him since the day Bob shouted, "Don't touch him, you're filthy." I watched her close her eyes and hold him tight, like she was trying to erase that moment with love, and maybe she did. Jolia sat beside me on the porch and said, "He asks about you. I tell him you're the reason we're safe now." I didn't say anything. I just nodded, because I wasn't ready to forgive, but I was ready to acknowledge the truth. Bob was gone. Jolia had left him for good. She'd filed for divorce, blocked his number, and even changed her address to keep him away. She said he hadn't tried to see Zaid since she left. And honestly, I wasn't surprised. Cowards don't chase what they break. They just look for someone else to blame. Jolia started working full-time at a local clinic. She wasn't earning much, but she was proud of herself. She paid her own rent, bought her own groceries, and even started saving. She told me, "I want Zaid to grow up knowing what respect looks like." That hit me hard, because for years she had watched disrespect happen in front of her. She had let it slide, let it grow, let it poison her home, but now she was choosing something better. One evening, she came over with a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note and a photo of her and Zaid at the park. The note said, "Thank you for protecting Mom. Thank you for protecting me, even when I didn't see it. I'm learning. I'm healing. And I hope one day you'll let me earn back your trust." I read it twice. Then I handed it to Pamela. She read it, smiled softly, and said, "She's trying." And she was. But I still had one more step to take. Because revenge isn't just about reclaiming your space. It's about restoring your dignity. And I wanted Jolia to understand what that meant. So I invited her to dinner. Not just any dinner. A quiet evening with just the three of us, me, Pamela, and her. No Zaid, no distractions. Just a table, a meal, and a conversation. She arrived on time, dressed simply, carrying a homemade dessert. She looked nervous. We ate slowly. Talked about work, about Zaid, about the weather. Then I said, "Jolia, I need you to hear something." She put down her fork and nodded. I said, "You didn't just let Bob insult your mother. You let him do it in her own home. You watched her shrink. You watched her cry. And you said nothing." She looked down. "I know," I continued. "You were raised by a woman who gave you everything, who never asked for anything in return. And when she needed you to stand up, you stayed silent." Tears welled up in her eyes. I was scared. "I know," I said. "But fear doesn't excuse silence. It explains it." That's all. She wiped her eyes. "I'm sorry," I nodded. "I believe you. But I need you to understand, this isn't about punishment. It's about accountability. You're welcome here, but you don't live here anymore. This is our home. You visit, you respect, you rebuild." She nodded slowly. "I understand," and she did. From that day on, she never overstepped. She never assumed. She asked before coming over. She helped without being asked. She listened more than she spoke. And Pamela? She started healing too. She began teaching sewing classes at the community center. She joined a book club. She even started writing a memoir just for herself. She said, "I want to remember everything. The good, the bad, and the strength it took to survive." I supported her every step of the way. Because revenge isn't just about making someone pay. It's about making sure the people you love never feel powerless again. If you're watching this on the Revenge Diaries channel and this story moved you even a little, please like and subscribe. There are more stories coming. Stories that prove healing is the most powerful revenge of all. It had been nearly a year since I told Jolia and Bob to leave. And now, sitting across from my daughter at our dinner table, I could see how much had changed. Not just in her, but in us. The tension that used to hang in the air like smoke was gone, replaced by something quieter, something cautious. Like we were all learning how to breathe again. Jolia didn't try to rush things. She didn't ask to move back in. She didn't ask for money. She just kept showing up, helping Pamela with groceries, bringing Zaid over for short visits, and slowly rebuilding the bridge she had burned. But I still hadn't said the words she was waiting for. I hadn't said, "I forgive you." Because forgiveness isn't a gift you hand out like candy. It's something that grows slowly, like a plant in dry soil, and I wasn't sure if mine had roots yet. One afternoon, I was fixing the garden fence when Jolia came by. She didn't say much, just sat on the porch watching me work. After a while, she said, "I've been thinking about everything. About how I let things get so bad." I kept hammering, letting her speak. She continued, "I used to think love meant loyalty, no matter what. Even when Bob was cruel. Even when I knew he was wrong. I thought standing by him made me strong." I paused. "It didn't," she nodded. "I know that now. Real strength is standing up for what's right, even when it's hard." I looked at her. "And you think you're strong now?" She didn't flinch. "I'm getting there." That was the first time I believed her. Later that evening, Pamela and I sat in the living room sipping tea. She said, "She's changing." "I can see it," I nodded, "but I still don't trust her completely." "That's okay," Pamela said. "Trust takes time, but she's earning it." And she was. She started volunteering at the same community center where Pamela taught sewing. She helped organize food drives, read stories to kids, and even spoke at a support group for young mothers. People began to see her not as Bob's wife, but as her own person. One day, she asked if she could bring Zaid over for the weekend. Just him, no distractions. No drama, we agreed. He arrived with a small backpack, clutching a stuffed bear and smiling wide. Pamela scooped him up, laughing, and I felt something shift inside me. Something warm, something hopeful. That weekend was quiet, peaceful. Zaid played in the garden, helped Pamela bake cookies, and sat beside me while I read the newspaper. He didn't ask about his father. He didn't cry. He just soaked in the love. On Sunday evening, Jolia came to pick him up. She looked nervous, like she was afraid we'd changed our minds. But we hadn't. I handed her Zaid's backpack and said, "He's welcome any time." She smiled. "Thank you," and I meant it, because revenge isn't just about pushing people away. Sometimes it's about making them earn their way back in, but I still hadn't said the words. I hadn't said, "I forgive you." And then something unexpected happened. Bob showed up. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Pamela was out shopping. I was trimming the hedges. And suddenly there he was, standing at the gate, looking thinner, older, and just as arrogant. He didn't smile. Didn't greet me. Just said, "I want to see my son." I stood up slowly. "You lost that right," he scoffed. "He's my blood." I walked toward him. "Blood doesn't mean anything if you poison it." He stepped back. "Jolia doesn't get to decide everything." "She didn't," I said. "I did." He stared at me, jaw clenched. "You think you're the hero in all this?" I didn't answer, because I didn't need to be the hero. I just needed to be the protector. He turned and walked away. I called Jolia that evening and told her what happened. She was shaken but grateful. She said, "He's been trying to reach me." I blocked him again. I said, "Good," because some doors should never be reopened. That night, I sat with Pamela and told her everything. She listened quietly, then said, "You did the right thing." And for the first time, I felt it. Not just the satisfaction of revenge, but the peace of resolution. The next weekend, Jolia came over again. She brought Zaid, helped Pamela in the kitchen, and even joined me in the garden. As we planted new flowers, she said, "I know I hurt you. I know I hurt Mom, and I'll never stop trying to make it right." I looked at her. "You've come a long way," she smiled. "I had good teachers, and that's when I said it. I forgive you." She froze. Her eyes filled with tears. "You do?" I nodded. "I do. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing peace over pain." She hugged me. Tight. Like she was holding on to something she thought she'd lost forever. And maybe she was. If you're watching this on the Revenge Diaries channel, and this story moved you, even a little, please like and subscribe. There are more stories coming. Stories that prove revenge isn't always about hurting someone. Sometimes it's about healing yourself. Forgiveness is quiet. It doesn't come with fireworks or applause. It doesn't erase the past. It just loosens the grip of pain, one breath at a time. After I told Jolia I forgave her, she cried. Not the dramatic kind, just soft tears. Like something inside her had finally unclenched. She hugged me and I let her. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guarded around her. I felt calm. But forgiveness doesn't mean everything goes back to how it was. It means you move forward with new rules, new boundaries, new understanding. Jolia understood that. She didn't ask to move back in. She didn't overstay her visits. She didn't try to act like nothing had happened. She kept showing up respectfully, quietly, consistently, and Zaid? He became the bridge between us. He'd come over on weekends, sometimes for a few hours, sometimes overnight. He loved helping Pamela in the kitchen, especially when she made parathas. He'd sit on the counter, swinging his legs, watching her flip them with wide eyes and a giggle that filled the house with warmth. One Sunday morning, he asked me, "Nana, why don't I live here?" I paused. "Because you live with Mama now." He nodded. "But I like it here," I smiled. "We like having you here." He leaned against me. "Mama says this house is safe." I looked at him, this little boy who had no idea how much history lived in these walls, and said, "It is, and it always will be." That afternoon, Jolia came to pick him up. She saw us sitting on the porch, Zaid curled up beside me, half asleep. She smiled, but her eyes looked heavy. I asked, "You okay?" She hesitated. "I got a message from Bob's cousin. He said Bob's trying to come back, that he wants to make things right." I didn't say anything. She continued, "I blocked him again, but it shook me. I don't want him near Zaid. I don't want him near me." I nodded. "You're doing the right thing." She looked at me. "I used to think I needed him, that I couldn't raise Zaid alone, but I'm learning I can." I said, "You're not alone." She smiled. "I know." That was a turning point. Jolia started documenting her journey, writing blog posts, sharing her story with other young mothers, even speaking at local events. She didn't name Bob. She didn't play the victim. She just told the truth, how she lost herself, how she found her strength, and how she's building a better life for her son. One of her posts went viral. It was titled, "I didn't leave for me, I left for my son." Thousands of women commented. Some shared their own stories. Some said they were still stuck. Some said they were finally ready to walk away. Jolia showed me the comments. "I didn't think anyone would care." I said, "People care when you speak from the heart." She nodded. "I learned that from you." And maybe she did. Because revenge isn't always about what you do to someone. Sometimes it's about what you refuse to let them do to you. Bob tried to reach out again. Through mutual friends, through fake accounts, even through a letter left at Jolia's workplace. She didn't respond. She handed the letter to the manager and said, "If he shows up again, call the police." That's when I knew she was truly done. Not just with him, but with the version of herself that tolerated him. One evening, she came over with Zaid and asked if we could take a photo together. "I want to frame it," she said, "for his room." We stood in the garden, me, Pamela, Jolia, and Zaid. The sun was setting behind us, casting a soft glow over everything. Zaid held Pamela's hand. Jolia stood beside me, her arm gently resting on my shoulder. The photo came out beautiful, but more than that, it felt honest. It wasn't a picture of a perfect family. It was a picture of a family that had been broken, bruised, and rebuilt. And that's the kind of revenge that lasts. Not the kind that screams. The kind that stands. If you're watching this on the Revenge Diaries channel, and this story moved you, even a little, please like and subscribe. There are more stories coming. Stories that prove you don't need to destroy someone to win. You just need to protect what matters and never let anyone take it from you again.